All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about something called Rosy Retrospection. And I bet it's a feeling you've had, even if you've never heard the term before.
You know that feeling of looking back and thinking, the good old days? Well, turns out even the ancient Romans had a phrase for it, memoria praetortorum bonorum. It's this idea that seems like it's been around forever, just baked into how we think.
But that's the big question, isn't it? Were the good old days really that good? Or is our own brain maybe playing a few tricks on us? So, to get to the bottom of this, we've got to define what we're actually talking about. And you've probably heard the phrase, looking through rose-colored glasses, right? Well, that's the perfect way to start thinking about this.
Okay, so what is rosy retrospection, really? In psychology, it's this idea, this proposed phenomenon, that we have a tendency to remember the past way more positively than how we actually felt when we were living it. It's like our brain is a little editor, polishing up our old memories to make them shine.
And right about now, you're probably thinking, wait, isn't that just nostalgia? And that is a fantastic question. They're super similar, but there's a key difference. Nostalgia, that's more of a warm, fuzzy, sentimental feeling for the past. Rosy retrospection is a little different. It's more of a judgment, where you're actually convincing yourself the past was objectively, factually better than it was.
All right, so the idea makes sense, but how on earth do you even test something like this? I mean, how do you measure a memory? Well, let's take a look at the science. It turns out one of the best ways to study this is by looking at vacations. Think about it. They're the perfect little experiment. They have a clear start and finish, and they're usually packed with all sorts of emotions, both good and bad.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Researchers would ask people how happy they expected to be before their trip. And excitement is high. Then they'd ask them during the trip, and that's when reality hits. You get the delayed flights, the sunburn, the argument over where to eat dinner, so the happiness rating dips. But then, and this is the kicker, weeks later, when they ask them to remember the vacation, boom, the happiness rating shoots right back up. It's like all the annoying stuff gets forgotten and only the good parts remain. That's rosy retrospection in action.
And it seems like the more time that passes, the stronger this effect gets. One study from back in '95 found that people remembered their day as being better than it was in the moment. And when they looked back on the whole week, it seemed even better. It's like distance literally makes the heart grow fonder of our own memories.
Okay, but it can't all be sunshine and roses, right? Memory is way more complicated than that. So, let's talk about the flip side.
What if the glasses we're looking through aren't rosy? What if they're blue?
This is what some researchers have started calling blue retrospection. And yeah, it's the total opposite. It's when we remember things as being way worse than they actually were. So it seems our memory isn't just an editor, it can be a bit of a drama queen, blowing things up in both positive and negative directions.
And get this isn't a fixed thing. It can change as we age. A really cool study from 2021 followed a group of kids in Switzerland. At age 12, they had that classic rosy bias. They remembered their weeks in a positive light. But check this out. 3 years later, at age 15, the whole thing flipped. They now had a blue bias, remembering their weeks more negatively. Same kids, just a few years apart.
So what's going on there? Well, personality might have something to do with it. One study in 2016 suggested that our natural tendencies play a part. People who are more extroverted, they tend to lean towards the rosy, positive memories. But people who are higher in neuroticism, they're more likely to experience that blue, negative bias.
Okay, so this all brings us to the million-dollar question. Why? Why does our brain do this? Why isn't our memory just like a perfect video camera, recording everything exactly as it happened? Why does it have to be a storyteller?
Well, if we're talking about the rosy side of things, there could be some actual upsides. For one, it can be great for our self-esteem and just our overall sense of well-being. I mean, if you remember your life as mostly good times, you're going to feel better, right? And there's another theory. Maybe it's just more efficient for our brains. Instead of storing every single boring detail, it just keeps the highlight reel. It's like mental housekeeping.
But, and this is a really big but, we have to pump the brakes a little. The research here isn't a slam dunk. Some studies find this effect, others don't. And if there's one thing that's pretty much universally agreed upon in psychology, it's that our memories, well, they're just not that reliable to begin with.
And you have to look at how these studies are done. A lot of them have some pretty big limitations. They often use really small groups, and a lot of the time it's college students, which, isn't exactly a perfect sample of everyone on Earth. Plus, they're usually looking at memories from a few days or weeks ago, not the decades we think of when we talk about the good old days. And of course, there's always the chance that people in the study kind of figure out what's going on and it affects their answers. So, where does that leave us? I think the big takeaway is this. Your memory isn't a video camera. It's a storyteller. It's constantly editing your past, smoothing out the rough patches, making the highlights brighter, and sometimes making the low points seem even lower. Which leads to one last question for you to chew on. If your memory is telling a story, who is the audience?